Well, g'day and welcome back. Today I've got a little Astor radio. It's a mantle radio from about 1958, built in Melbourne by Astor. The model number is DNQ, and it's looking pretty good. Case is pretty good. It needs a polish. A fairly standard setup, on off, volume, tone, and tuning. That'll be directly onto the capacitor, I think. This grill here might be a little discoloured. I'm not sure. It's still a creamy colour. I'm not sure it used to be white or not. Today I've got my friend the Claw assisting me. The Claw was formerly known as my right hand. Now, due to a sequencing error, he got his finger stuck in the door yesterday as I was getting out of the car, so it's got a bit squashed. So I've put a glove on so you can't see it. It's not nice to look at, so I'm going to keep a glove on, and the Claw will assist me, although it seems to have taken on its own personality, so I'll see what happens there. Now, I've outlined a three-step plan for myself and stuck it in a prominent place on how to get out of a car without damaging yourself. I'll just have a look at the back. There's a louver missing there and a bundle of wire, but the louver's not a problem. But that looks good. I think this will come up all right. So I'll work out how to get it apart and I'll have a look inside. This is the bottom here, and it's just got two little clips holding it together. It's just clipped together. That's unusual. I was just looking at the bottom of this now, and it looks pretty original. It's still got all the original caps in it. By the look of it, nothing's changed there. So, got some bare wires there that used to have sleeving on them. Another one there. So some little animals have been in there. The speaker looks okay from here. There's a bit of paper in here. That's just an old mud map of the chassis, the valves. Just having a look at the top now, and it's got permeability tuning. I'd seen these on Philips. I didn't know Astor did it as well. I had assumed the knob on the front there was directly coupled to the air capacitor, but it's not. So it's moving that. Yeah, that's remarkably smooth. I can see here there's a brass band running around a drum underneath, I think. So that's what's moving that up and down. So as we said, it's a 5-valve, and there's my favourite, the 6M5 again. Yeah, so very simple set. I'll do some basic electrical checks, make sure it's safe to turn on, and we'll put some power on it and see if it works. So I'd have a quick look at this permeability tuning here. I've only seen it once before on a Philips set, and I didn't have to adjust it, and I believe they used to have it a lot in car radios, probably because of its low profile, and maybe it's a bit more temperature stable too, for a car getting hot and cold all the time. So this would be the antenna coil, and this would be the oscillator coil. And I would guess there's a capacitor across both of these to form a tank circuit. And in the normal oscillator and aerial tank circuit, you would adjust the capacitance. In this one, you're just adjusting the inductance, and the capacitance stays set. And here's a trimming capacitor here. That'll be for one of these two. I'm not sure which one it is. Probably the antenna, I guess. And if I tilt it up, there must be one underneath somewhere. Yeah, there it is there. So that'll be for the oscillator, I would think. So why they would do that for this sort of radio and not just use a conventional capacitor, I don't know. Usually these things are price driven, so these are probably cheaper to make. I've checked this out quite thoroughly. I can't see any problems as far as any damage that's going to cause any problems. The transformer's checked out okay. I've got, let's see, I've got 232 volts here. I'm on dim bulb. It's going through the variac and an isolation transformer. I'll put some power on. It should go bright, dull, and it's pulling 18 watts. So it looks pretty normal so far. And it's humming. And yeah, look, the voltage has dropped right off there. 20 watts. I'll just wind it up a little bit. I suspect there's something wrong with one of the capacitors. Yeah, look at the 170 volts is all I'm getting at 25 watts, so I would suggest one of the filter capacitors is almost shorted out. Let's pull that 6M5 out and see if that makes a difference. Let's try it again with the 6M5 out, see what it... Alright, so we've still got the same problem, so it's somewhere in the power supply that the issue is. I can try changing that valve, but I think it'll be a filter, one of these filters. I've put a spare 6x4 in there just for fun. I don't think this will do anything. No, so it's not that. I'll change both these electrolytics and we'll see if that fixes it. I've had to put the claw back on. I kept hitting it and it's getting dirty, so I'll put my claw back on. Here's the two filter caps here, one on top here and this one here. That one's 24. I think that should be 16 according to the schematic. I'm just going to tack a cap in there and we'll see what happens. That's the positive end there. I've just tacked in a 24 microfarad cap here. This one goes from the power supply out of the rectifier and across to the center tap, I think. So I'm just going to try it with that. We'll see if that fixes it. I suspect it'll be this one. I'll just put my 6M5 back in. I'll try that. Dim bulb. Looks pretty much the same. Ooh, a lot of hum now. Okay, that's the same. Now this capacitor here is mounted onto the chassis and it's just got a little tag out the bottom there. Now I've shorted it out to make sure it hasn't got anything left in there. So let's cut that off. So this is the positive end, so make sure we put the positive end that way. So once again I'll just tack it in here. There's a ground here, I'll just tack it on there. So this is completely isolated from that capacitor now, so that's out of the circuit. We'll try that. Alright, let's try that. Dim bulb again, and we'll see how we go. Looking very similar. Wow, there's so much noise in that. So much hum. Yeah, same again, so 150 and 20 watts. So that's plate voltage at the output valve, nowhere near it. Should be 170 on. It's a very small schematic, but we'll see what's going on. There's the rectifier. The power comes along here, the output from the rectifier through the output transformer onto the plate of this output valve, the 6M5. I've got a meter here. So that's where we're measuring about 7 to 10 volts. We should have, I think it's about 100, oh there it is, 175 volts. Now here's the two capacitors I changed, 16 there, and the other one's down here. There it is, goes to the center tap of that output the power transformer. So that's been changed. I think what I should do now perhaps is lift this resistor here off. That's supplying the screen and all the other valve plates voltages. So if I lift that off, then I can determine whether it's in this line here or in this line here. Now I need to find this 3.3k resistor. It's on the line out of the rectifier, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. But there it is there. It's 3, 3 and a 2, so that's 33, 2 zeros, 3,300, so 3.3k. So I'll just try and get that off. Just make sure I've got a charge in these capacitors. Alright, the resistor's lifted off now, so all we've got is that small part of the circuit working. Alright, we'll try it with the resistor disconnected, see what happens this time. No, it's doing the same. Got a little bit more voltage there, but you'd expect that. So something is pulling that down. Or perhaps it's just not getting the power to start with. We'll have a look at that. I can't get over the amount of hum that's in there, considering it's got two new capacitors in it. And I'm going to put power back on again. I've got my meter on AC. Here's the output from the transformer. That's the center tap. This will be the two outputs from either side. And what do we got? 115. 110. Now I've gone back to DC on the meter. Here's the output from the rectifier, and we've got 53 volts. Yeah. So perhaps I'll lift that off and we'll see what else. They've got nothing connected after that. I'm just going to take the 6M5 out so we don't ruin it. put power back on, and this should shoot straight up. What have I got there? 256 volts coming out of there. And it's supposed to be 109, so I suspect the transformer's working, the rectifier's working. I'll just turn it off. So something after here, including this output transformer, is shorting or something. I guess the easiest thing to do is lift off the other components after this. Here's the output transformer I was just pointing to. The only components after that are this capacitor here, and there's one over here. This valve has been removed previously and didn't make any difference. So I think the best thing to do would be to cut this 0.0022 capacitor out, and if that doesn't work, it'll be this one here. I suspect it'll be this 0.0022. A little bit hard to see, but there's the 0.002, and that's the 50 picofarad, I think. So I'll cut this one out. This is 0.022. Done, and we'll see if that makes a difference. Just got to solder this supply line back on again. Now I'll go over and do all these again once I get it sorted out. Now I've still got the 6M5 out. Okay, let's give this a go. That's better. 220 and 12 watts. That's much better. What do we got here? 258 volts. So that's probably what the problem was, I think. The hums died off. Yeah, okay. So that's what it was that cap. So I'll just solder some parts back in again, and we should be able to check the radio. Alright, I reckon we'll work this time. Got 212 volts there now. Should drop down to 170 odd. It's a digital meter, so it's not going to be accurate. There it goes.
To whom the person...
So it sounds like the volume control needs a bit of work. So that's working pretty well. We're not even on full power yet. I'll chuck it up to full power. We'll see what we get.
Has been arrested under controversial new security laws imposed by China. Here's China correspondent Bill Birtles.
Police swarmed the residence of...
Past 4. From here...
Favourite on fixed price, Globe Derby, race 3 in...
Okay, so this is working pretty good. Needs a little bit of cleaning up, of course. I'll cut that capacitor out and we'll just check it. I've just connected this to my little capacitor tester. Whether it'll come up as a resistor, who knows? Yeah, it's a resistor. So there you go. It's got a 1.52 ohm resistor in there. That's pretty bad for a capacitor. I've not seen one go that bad, but it's got a fair voltage on one side and low voltage on the other, so that's what happens. Now I've got the radio running again. It's on full power. There's the output valve grid voltage. It should be -4. It's -1.5, so hopefully that'll come back after I change all the capacitors. With this now working, I'm going to mount these capacitors correctly. I'll mount this on a tag strip here, so this will get nice and neat, and I'll just hide this underneath the chassis. I'll change all these other wax caps. Obviously they're no good anyway. I'll probably have to take this out of the case to be able to get to these capacitors down here, so I'll do that. Then we'll come back and do the next step. So interesting bit of troubleshooting there. I haven't had that situation where it's been that bad that it's just dragged the whole thing down. I thought these capacitors here would have been the culprit. Initially I was fairly confident. Finally ended up with that capacitor. Someone with more experience than me probably would have gone straight for that capacitor, I don't know. But anyway, we got there. Only took half an hour or so, that's not too bad. I just want to check the valves. This is the 6X4 rectifier. I've done a shorts test. It says put it on 6 and 30 here. I'll just turn it down and do a test. It should be okay. Then it says put it on 1, 30. So that's okay. I thought that may have suffered after being under load for a while. So that's okay. 6M5. I'll do a shorts test on these because these always short out. So there's the short. There's 3. 5. They always do it. Alright. For the test, we need it on selector number 2, 35 on the dial there, and they test alright. So this tester always pulls them up as a short. So I'm not really sure what to make of these ones. Next valve is a 6BD7, so that's a triode and a double diode. So there'll be 3 tests for this one. So it says ignore shorts on 5. We've got a short on 5, that's okay. Oops, 7. Okay, so we're not supposed to have shorts on those. That's indicating a faulty valve. I'll test it anyway. 30. And selector number 2. No, it's not working at all. That's a bad one. I'll see if I've got a new one. Alright, I've got another 6BD7. I'm not sure if it's new or second hand. So try a shorts test on that one. We're allowed at 5, and that's 5. That's 7 again. And 8. Well, there you go. I'll go and get another one. I'm pretty confident that is a new one. So I'll put that in there and see what that one does. I'll try it for shorts again and just watch the shorts. We're allowed one on 5. There's 5. 7. They're all the same. They're all doing exactly the same. So that is definitely a brand new one. It says here selector number 2. So put that on 2. And get a test. And 30, it should be alright. Okay. I'm not sure why they're all shorting out. That one I had originally was definitely a dud. This valve's the preamp and the double diode, so the first test we did was for the preamp, the triode, and this is for the 2 detectors inside, so we'll have a look at those. Select the number 8. And we should go to 100. So all we do here is read the bottom scale, and it says it's okay. And the next selector was number 6. Go to 100. Yeah. So that's about as normal for a good one. So they'll put that valve in there. Next valve is the IF amp. It's a 6BH5. I'll try that in there. Alright, I've got it on short, and I'll just check number 5. Oops, 1, 2. What's going on? Yeah, starting to wonder if this thing works. It's just putting shorts on everything. So I go to 2. I'll have to get the other tester out, I think. I go to test, and test is 30. Yeah, it'll be fine. And the last one's a mixer valve, 6BE6. I'll test that for shorts. We're allowed a short on number 4. It's 4. So that's testing alright. So for test, we've got to select a 1 and 30. And that one's pretty bad as well. So I'll go and get a new one of those. Alright, I've got a brand new one here. I'll just do that shorts test again. There's 4, that was okay. So no shorts anywhere else, that's okay. Selector was number 1 and 30. Yeah, that one's okay. So I'll fit that valve. So we had 2 duds in that lot. I've put all the valves back in, and all these capacitors are replaced now. There's a couple up this end as well. Speaker's looking good. There's one tiny little hole there, so I'll just put a bit of rubber cement on there and that'll fix that up. The speaker's good. I took the chassis out of the case, and I've made up a couple little blocks there and just screwed the chassis back onto it to keep it stable. Alright, I'll put it on dim bulb, just check it out.
But plenty of grease bug bangers singers coming through. Barbecue bugs. People want garlic butter. Some people want chili. I don't think we should get fancy. Keep it simple.
So that looks pretty good. Got 190 volts and about 18 watts. I'll go to full power.
Showing coast 16 degrees. Next, I'll take you across the river to Parliament House to check the temperature.
And 27 watts sounds pretty good.
On ABC Radio, you're listening to Rebecca Livingston.
9:10, because it is the second last sitting week of Queensland.
So that sounds pretty good. I replaced the output valve grid capacitor here, so I'll just see what we've got on there, and it should be -4. -3.6. That'll do. I checked all the resistors while I was doing all this, and everything worked all right. So I'll just go through and check some voltages, make sure we're on the money for voltages. So the voltages are all in the ballpark, and happy with that. All I want to know is that they're getting somewhere near their correct voltage, and it's working fine now. So yeah, all the caps are done, the valves are done. The top of the chassis needs a clean. There's a little issue on the front here, and I'll address that now. The top mounting hole on the speaker here's got a bolt through it into a stay, and the stay is attached to the chassis here. It's just been soldered on. But all they've done is soldered from the stay onto the chassis. It's hopeless. That would be lucky to make it off the end of the production line without breaking. So I'll make a little plate up and just resolder that. Now I've got a little shim out here. Well, just stick that across there. I've covered this whole thing with Baker's soldering fluid. Now whether I can get enough heat into it, I don't know. I spent a few minutes trying to get enough heat in there, and I can't do it. I'll have to get a bigger soldering iron. That's not a soldering iron. That's a soldering iron. Alright, let's give this a go. Alright, that's taken pretty well. I'll just clean all that flux off the joint there, and that'll hold much longer than the old one. There it is, all cleaned up, and that'll be solid for a couple of years. You think when they designed it they would have put a little joggle in this strap to go around the front, and then you could have soldered it on without any trouble, but whatever. There's a tiny pinhole in this speaker. I'll just put some liquid electrical tape on it, and I'll do it. Fixed. I was just doing a final check of the circuit, and I realised I hadn't put that .0022 cap back in, the one that was shorting out and giving me all the trouble. So I've fitted one, and I've put a yellow one in there. I've got black ones from Carl, but I thought I'll teach myself a lesson and put a yellow one in there for forgetting. In this radio it's not such a big deal, but in older radios that have got some value, I would always use Carl's black caps. If you live in Australia, have a look at Carl's eBay store. The link's in the description below, and he's telling me now that people from overseas are buying them because it's actually cheaper to buy them from Australia than some of the local producers over there. So have a look. The exchange rate's pretty favourable most of the time. So it may actually be worth buying these from Australia if you need to. But they look much better than that. That just blends right in. You can't even see them. To clean it, I'll take the valves out, blow it all out, and I'll just be careful of these here. They've got wires quite loose on there. They're just sort of hanging on the side, so I'll take a bit of care there. I'm going to use some of this premium strength starter fluid, which is endorsed by Jeff Clark. I don't want to go overboard with this. I don't care about it too much. Just a bit of an exercise in getting a radio going, really. So I'll pull the valves out and then get... Oh, the claw's already started for me. Thanks. For anyone interested, the claw's feeling much better today. The pain's dropped down to excruciating, so it's much better. There we go. What about that one, claw? Oh, there he goes. You missed that one. I took some of this starting fluid into a pub with me the other day and ordered a beer, and the barman said, well, that's okay, but don't try and start anything. That cleaned up well and pretty easy too. The spray just washed all that dirt away and just brushed it away, blew it away. So nice and clean now. Now I've got to clean these valves up as well. I'll use a tissue and some water and just try and get the dirt off. Usually even the water will take that print off sometimes, so you just got to go around it. They'll come up okay. So I cleaned all these valves off with a Dremel and a wire brush, and I just spray in these sockets with some deoxit D5. Then I spray the pins a little bit, just get a little bit on there, you don't need much. Put it in the socket, wobble it around a bit, then I take it out and let it sit for 3 or 4 minutes and then put them back. That's been about 3 or 4 minutes, so I can just put the valves back. Alright, they're all in. Hopefully doing the deoxit will give us a couple of years of trouble-free motoring without any crackling from valve bases. Now I washed this case in hot soapy water and it's cleaned up pretty well. The top is dull, side's not so bad. It's got paint on it of course, which is pretty much mandatory. I'm just going to polish it all again like I normally do. Now I'm not going to bore you to death with me polishing radios every video, but I'll just show you that how it comes up, and then I'll do it all and we can have a look later. I'll probably have to use a bit of solvent to get some of this paint off, or it might come off. Now I've just got an automotive polish here as I always use. It's a fairly heavy cut and polish. It's what you would use with a buffing machine. Now, look, it's coming up okay, but it's not bringing out the red that was there originally. I don't think we'll ever achieve that back again. I'll use a finer polish, we'll see what happens. Now I think that's as good as it's going to come up. It's got a sort of a white mottled look about it, so it's just the material underneath breaking down. But I'll finish it off with all that. It'll come up well enough. I might even try a bit of Brasso on the top after I've finished all this and see how it comes up. Well, that's about as good as the case is going to come up. It's not quite perfect. It's discoloured slightly, and it's a bit, as I said before, it's a bit motley looking, or little white dots all over it. So I'm going to have to leave it like that. I will assemble it. I've got some polish that I might try on after I've assembled it. I'm not going to do it now, and just see if it'll cover that a bit. But looks pretty good. Just cleaning up the station pointer here with a bit of Brasso, and it's come up all right. It looks pretty good actually. The back has some black paint on there as it make a line for the pointer. That's worn off to it, particularly at the end there. So I'll mask that up and just spray a bit more paint on there. I've put some masking tape on that pointer, and I'll just hit it with the spray from the rattle can. And that's all it'll need. So I'll let that dry and take the tape off later. I need to check the alignment. I've already set these two IF cans to 455. The little slugs were pretty tight, so I sprayed them with deoxit and eventually got them to move. So I was able to adjust them, so they're good. I've done that 100 times, so there's no point doing it all again. Now this is a bit different because it's got this permeability tuning in it, and I've never done one before. I've never adjusted or never checked it. Now the little slugs here are set at the factory. There's a measurement from here to here, and that you don't normally have to touch that. There's only a couple of adjustments on it. It's a pretty simple system to set up, so we'll run through that. It's a bit hard to see in the camera. There's a stop sticking up here, and the carriage or the sled comes along and contacts it. The first thing to do is the pointer position, so I'll flip the radio on its side and we can see the adjustments for that. To adjust the pointer, you run the sled down into the stop. Two little grub screws come into view, and you can loosen those off, and that'll disconnect that from the shaft. So the pointer is attached to the shaft. You can't rotate that, but you can reposition the shaft. So that has to be done with the chassis in the case, so you can see where the pointer is. So I'll reassemble the chassis into the case, and we'll try and adjust it. Now put the chassis back in the set, and I've got the dial back on. I'll turn the dial and get the carriage or the sled to hit the stop. There we go. And it's out. It should be lining up with that black dot, I think. So it does need to be adjusted. There's the adjustment screws. I'll see if I can undo them. Okay. I'm holding the sled with one hand and I just need to line that up. And now I'll do the screws up without moving anything, hopefully. Just do one up and make sure it's right. That looks pretty good. Alright, that's done then. I've set everything up. I've got the signal generator connected. I've got it on a dummy antenna. I've got the speaker going into a dummy load, or it's set to speaker at the moment, but I'll change that. Now just where my finger is, there's a little black dot on the dial. The instructions say to put the pointer on that and then adjust the oscillator to get maximum signal, so I'll do that. Now I've got the oscillator on 1000. There it is. So I've set that pretty close to 1000, I think. And I think that's the oscillator adjustment. I can't find any reference to which one's which, but that'll be it there. So I'm just going to turn that and we'll keep an eye on the meter. There it goes. Okay, that's it. Just put it on dummy load there, get rid of the noise. This is the antenna trimmer, and the instructions say to peak this one at the same time. That'll do. And then it says go back to the oscillator and recheck that one. So I'll just adjust that now, see if we get anything. I'll just do the antenna again. Well, that's it. That's all you have to do is center the dial at about the 1000 there and just adjust the oscillator and the antenna for max signal so they're both in line with each other, and then you just dial either side of that to pick up your stations. And I guess they're accurate enough with the coils that they can do that. And normally you would peak it at the bottom and then trim it at the top, but you don't do it on this one. So very simple, and I'll just see how well it works. Alright, let's test it out. I've reconnected the internal speaker, so it's running on its own speaker now. I'll just turn it up and we'll see where it's at. Well, that's the racing station. Now we've got 4KQ here, and that's about the only station that's even close to where it originally was when they built these things. And it's so thick a line. Yeah, it doesn't seem that accurate anyway.
From 7 to 8. I pay rent. Beautiful, brand new. Free until 2021. Madison has ready to move into.
Just looking at that, I would think that the arrow was a little bit high. I wonder if that moved while I was adjusting it. I'll just check it again. Yeah, it did too. Okay. Yeah, this must have moved. I must have touched it at some point. It moves so very easily that it's obviously moved away from its point. So I'll just align that again and I'll come back. Now luckily I still had everything turned on, so I've realigned it again to the 1000. There you go. It's spot on. Yeah. Now I didn't notice that pointer had moved. I don't quite know how it moved, but it shows I should have checked again to make sure it was aligned and peaked. So lesson to me.
Top of them had a nice prop.
Well, that's working very well. This is just before the 60s, and I reckon this is about the time they reached their peak as far as AM radio concerned. So that was an interesting adjustment. I'm quite happy I've done that just to learn how to do it. Never had to do this before, as I said before, and yeah, quite good. I'm nearly done with this. I've just got to reassemble the back, and I'll just give that a bit of a polish with the polish I was talking about. I'll see if it makes any difference. I don't think it will, but it looks all right. It's what it is for its age. It's pretty good, actually. That just about does it for this radio. So it's an Astor radio built in Melbourne in about 1958, and came up quite nice. I've left this one all original. I haven't really changed a lot, so it's just fully serviced and ready to go. It's quite an attractive radio. I think if you had it on the shelf with a load of other radios, this one would probably stand out a bit to consumers who might buy them. But having said that, I haven't seen a lot of them around, so I don't know. Just to catch up on a few things, I said there was a louver missing here. In fact, it's never had a louver there. For some reason, it's got a gap. The 6M5 valve, which was showing shorts on the valve tester, I put it in my other tester and it passed without any trouble. So I perhaps need to look at my valve tester and see what's inside. There's not a lot in there. It's only a neon and a resistor, so I'm not sure how it all could fail. But anyway, so I might have a look at that one day and make sure that's working properly. Now, I did try a couple of polishes on the top here, trying to just bring it up a bit more, but can't do it. That's the plastic, so that's what it is. I'll have to leave it like that. So this was a nice short video, easy to do. Quite enjoyed working on this, and I like the radio itself. So if you enjoyed that, I hope you can join me for my next radio adventure. I get occasional comments as to why I don't use a dummy antenna to connect the signal generator to a radio when I'm aligning it, but I do use a dummy antenna. This is what I've been using. It's a 200 puff capacitor. The capacitor blocks DC travelling from the radio back into the signal generator, and I use a 390 ohm capacitor, and I just run that in series with the signal generator and the radio aerial. Today I thought I'd get high tech and I'll actually make a proper dummy antenna. Here's a little circuit from the Radio Manufacturers Association of America. It has the 200 puff capacitor. It also has a 400 puff. There's my 390, that's 400 ohm, 390 ohm resistor, and they've put a 20 microhenry inductor in there as well. So I've purchased a little box and some connectors to put on the end of the inductor, and I'll just make this little circuit up and put it in the little box. So there's my 22 microhenry inductor. There's the 200 puff cap and a 400 puff cap, and there's the 400 ohm resistor. I've got a little box and some BNC connectors and some hardware to put it all together. Here's a little cast alloy box that I've bought. I've drilled the holes out ready for the BNC connector. I've got it on an angle for two reasons. One is it looks cool, like a TV cop holding his gun sideways, and also I can get to the nuts on the back here if I'd put one on top of the other, just a bit harder. So that would seem like a good option. Give me a second, I'll mount the two connectors and come back. There you go, I mounted the two connectors on the end there. Now I've also connected these three components here together, and I'll just solder them. I'm going to burn with paper, but that's okay. That's those three components. I've just got the resistor to go. They don't have to be spaced. They don't have to be spaced out like that. I just did that because it seemed the neatest way of doing it. All I've got to do now is put that resistor across there, so I'll prepare this. Alrighty, I fitted that across the two wires there. I'll just drop some solder on them. Alright, that looks like a good solder job. Let's cut that one off. So all I have to do is trim that and fit it in between the two connectors there, and it's finished. Alright, I've soldered both those ends in, and we're done. So this is the signal generator end. I've got to mark that. I'll put a decal on the end here or something. And this end goes, of course, to the radio. I've put a lead on the signal generator, and that's running into the new dummy antenna. I've then got another lead running out, and that's running into the antenna of the radio here, the one we just did. I've got the radio going, it's warmed up, and the generator's been on for 10 minutes. I'm just going to put that on to 7. That's that range there, that arc there, the outer arc of the small one. And we'll go to 455, we should pick it up. And somebody's put a biro mark on the plastic. There it is. I didn't use this generator to align this radio. I picked this up at the club auction the other day, so it goes up to 240 megacycles. That's why I jumped on it. Let's see how we went with that tuning, or that variable induction tuning. And there's 3AK, I've centered it on up there, that's 1500. So there's 1500 there, and we're on 1500, so it's pretty close. Now the other station will be ZL, which is down Tassie. And ZL is 600, so I'll just find 600 on the dial, which is up here. So there you go. We've proved a few things here. The dummy antenna works, my new generator works, and the alignment we did on this variable induction tuning the other day was spot on. So those two stations at the extreme ends of the dial are spot on. So yeah, going well with all that. So what I'm thinking of doing is mounting it up here next to the speaker dummy load panel, and I'll put a little decal on the front there and make it look nice. And if I stand next to it, I'll have all the dummies in a row. I'll leave a link in the description below to where I got this circuit, and you can download it yourself. So I hope that helps some people, and thanks for watching.